Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel celebrates its second annual Unity Day. Hamas executes Palestinians in Gaza, and rumor has it that Donald Trump is coming to Israel. I'm Denise Wood here with the latest news in Israel. The situation is heating up again in Gaza, but this time it's not with Israel. International bodies are denouncing Hamas for executing 3 Palestinians this week, and it's safe to say things are getting tense. Local and international human rights organizations are denouncing the execution of 3 Palestinians this week in Gaza. All of the men received the death penalty after being convicted of murder. Hamas officials ignored appeals from the European Union and the United Nations to halt the executions. 2 of the prisoners were killed by firing squad, and the third, who was a Palestinian Authority policeman, was hanged. The development is likely to increase tensions between the rival Palestinian factions in Gaza and the West Bank. Palestinian Attorney General Ahmad Barak condemned the executions as flagrant violations of the law, saying the verdicts hadn't been ratified by PA President Mahmoud Abbas.
ننظر إلى أن تلك الأحكام هي أحكام منعدمة وليس وفقا لأحكام القانون لأنها مخالفة للقانون الأساسي التي تطلبت بشكل واضح وأصيل هو تصديق فخامة الرئيس عليها.
The Palestinian Center for Human Rights is also blasting the decision, saying the enforcement of the death sentence without presidential approval constitutes extrajudicial execution. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is reportedly planning a trip to Israel, and he's also got some choice words for Iran. Trump is reportedly planning to visit Israel before the Republican convention this summer. New York Magazine is reporting that 4 different sources say Trump is planning to head to the Holy Land in the next 6 weeks, but nothing has been confirmed. A Trump campaign person has denied the report, but Trump has previously said that he would visit Israel, so all bets are off. And while Trump is looking to make a big show of support for the Jewish state, he's also running into a few problems with Iran. Trump has consistently denounced the Iranian nuclear deal and has vowed to renegotiate it if he's elected president. Now Iran is hitting back, and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif says Trump doesn't have the power to renegotiate it because it was signed with several world powers and annexed to a Security Council resolution. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also consistently denounced the deal, and since its signing, Iran has tested ballistic missiles that were inscribed with threatening messages to Israel. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has now officially started in his new job, and former Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon is looking for a new political base. People are starting to ask, did this political shakeup make Netanyahu's coalition stronger or weaker? Jerusalem Post and Dow Jones Market Watch commentator Amos Asael told ILTV's Steve Leibovitz that Netanyahu's move is connected to relations between the U.S. and Israel.
Everyone understands, both there and here, that Netanyahu, in this regard, in taking his coalition further to the right, is trying to exploit a twilight moment in American politics as the presidential election approaches. And this is despite the fact that there is the precedent from the year 2000 when between Bill Clinton's, the end of his presidency and the arrival of his successor, at the time George Bush, during that narrow period, there was actually time for the outgoing American president to do some very ambitious diplomacy here in the Middle East. In that case, it was the Camp David talks. There is now suspicion here in Israel, in Netanyahu's circle, that Obama, in his last weeks, between November and January, will try to do something similar by joining European initiatives to impose all kinds of arrangements between Israel and the Palestinians. But as far as Netanyahu right now is concerned, this, despite it being less than a year away, still is distant enough for him to be happy with the current dynamics in Washington, which keep the White House pretty much away from Middle Eastern dynamics.
Well, with the French initiative on the table, with President al-Sisi from Egypt trying to encourage diplomatic matters, it seemed as though Netanyahu was making a move towards the center-left, towards the Zionist Union. Do you think that he intended all along for it to be a more right, center-right coalition?
This remains a big enigma. Herzog and the rest of Labor are convinced that Netanyahu was not negotiating with them in good faith and that he knew all along where he was headed. Others doubt that, and they think that something here slipped out of his control. And this is particularly, this suspicion arises particularly in the context of what happened with outgoing Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon, who most people think Netanyahu did not intend to see him fully leave, but only demoted from Defense Minister to Foreign Minister. His total departure, his resignation, was probably not planned by Netanyahu. So when you consider this, and you consider that what we ended up with, a very right-wing coalition, only several days before that could have been a left-leaning combination, creates the impression that something here slipped out of Netanyahu's control.
This is not the first of the former Likud ministers that's abandoning Netanyahu and maybe going off on their own. Moshe Ya'alon is the latest. There was also Moshe Kachlon, who's now the finance minister, but who started his own party. And before that, there was also Gideon Sa'ar, a former minister who is certainly not left politics permanently and plans to come back. Will Netanyahu have a real challenge from those three together to try to draw away a lot of the former strength of Likud, which is seen today as further to the right?
I think that chances of all these renegades and the people whom Netanyahu lost, whether because it was his fault or not, most people suspect it was his fault, but in any event, he's lost these people. The chances that they now will group together have risen dramatically, because in Ya'alon they can really have a focal point. And he really, everyone, including his enemies, agree that he's a real leader. And there's something very impressive about him, even according to his adversaries. He is prime ministerial matter. He's perceived as such by a broad swath of Israeli politics. And if he plays his own cards now shrewdly and manages ahead of an election to create some kind of an alliance with Lapid of the center and with these renegades, then they pose a truly serious threat to Netanyahu's future as Israel's prime minister.
The Paris Peace Conference is just 2 days away, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying it will only radicalize Palestinian demands in the peace process. Netanyahu has consistently criticized the French peace initiative, which is pushing for multilateral talks between Israel and the Palestinians. The initiative will kick off with an international conference this weekend in Paris, which is expected to be attended by world leaders from all over the globe. However, Netanyahu is denouncing the plan and is repeating his call for bilateral negotiations.
הדרך לשלום איננה עוברת דרך ועדות בינלאומיות שמנסות לכפות הסדר, מקצינות את התביעות הפלסטיניות ועל ידי כך מרחיקות את השלום. הדרך לשלום עוברת דרך משא ומתן ישיר וללא תנאים מוקדמים בין הצדדים. כך היה בעבר כשהשגנו שלום עם מצרים וגם עם ירדן, וכך צריך להיות עם הפלסטינים. אם המדינות שמתכנסות השבוע בפריז באמת רוצות לקדם את השלום, עליהן להצטרף לקריאתי לאבו מאזן לבוא למשא ומתן ישיר כזה. זוהי הדרך לשלום, אין בלתה.
Netanyahu also says the initiative could hurt prospects for peace, saying it could serve to radicalize Palestinian demands. Netanyahu has claimed the conference will try to force an agreement on the two parties, although recently he has partially endorsed the Arab peace plan, which would guarantee Israel with full diplomatic relations with 57 Arab and Muslim countries, once a peace deal is signed with the Palestinians. The Prime Minister says he's fully committed to making peace with the Palestinians and Israel's Arab neighbors, but that the Paris Peace Conference is not the answer. Both Israel and the Palestinians have not been invited to attend the conference. As the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians continues to drag on through the years, people are beginning to lose hope in the peace process. We've recently told you about several peace initiatives, but the question now is, what will really work? Dr. Mordechai Kedar has spent his career studying the Arab-Israeli population, and he's here with us today to talk about some of the current issues in Israel and what might really bring about peace. Thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
So first of all, there's a discussion right now about potentially bringing Ma'ale Adumim and saying it's actually a part of Israel and not in the West Bank. What do you think about that?
Well, this is something which should have been years ago, because in Israel there is a consensus that Ma'ale Adumim and Gush Etzion and Ariel should forever be inside Israel or part of Israel. And by the way, Ma'ale Adumim was built by the Labour Party. when they were in power. So there is a consensus in Israel almost totally to annex those concentrations of what they call settlements to Israel in any solution which will be with the Palestinians. So this thing, if this is the consensus, this should have been there for long ago. Unfortunately, the Israeli governments, both on the right and the left side of the aisle, were rather afraid from the Americans and the Europeans and all the others, and they didn't do the necessary thing.
Okay, now moving to another hot topic right now. We have the French Peace Initiative that is obviously being talked about a lot as it's taking place this weekend, the conference, and also the Arab Initiative. Do you think either of these have a chance of working? They're different but sort of similar.
No, it will not work because all these plans are aiming at creating a Palestinian state which will be a conglomerate of tribes from Hebron, from Ramallah, from Nablus, Jericho, Qalqilia, Tulkarem, and Jenin, and Gaza. This cannot work because it will create a situation which will end up like Syria, like Iraq, like Sudan, like Libya, because the culture is the same. Tribalism is still alive and kicking in these areas. The only solution can be the Emirate paradigm, which works very well in the Gulf, because Kuwait and Qatar and Dubai and Abu Dhabi and the other Emirates, and I exclude Bahrain, are stable and nice, not because of the oil. Dubai has no oil, but because every one of them is based on one single tribe. And when you have homogeneous society, the state actually rests on this society, so the state is stable. While if you have fragmented societies, it is in Iraq, which is fragmented along tribal lines and ethnic lines between Arabs and Kurds and Turkmens and others, and religious lines, Muslims, Christians, Yazidis and others, and sectarian lines, Sunna, Shia. When the society is so many groups which never became one nation, it ends up as a mayhem, as you see, and the oil doesn't help you. So Iraq, in spite of the oil, is a hell, while Dubai, without oil, is a heaven. Now, the only solution, therefore, for the Palestinian issue is to create emirates based on the clans of the cities. In Hebron, an emirate for the Jabri and Kawasme, Nachet, Tamimi, and Abu Snena tribes who lived together for centuries, very nicely. Another emirate in Jericho for the Arikards.
For just a second, for our viewers that don't understand, you're saying that these tribes are these families, so these are groups that have lived together for years and years and years and generations, correct?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. They live peacefully, and they don't mingle with the others. They don't marry the daughters to the others. They don't move, because the other is the enemy. Why? Because of this culture of the Middle East.
And this is even within the West Bank. These are different groups
within the Middle East. Look, the language, the Arabic language, which is spoken in Hebron, is totally different from the colloquial Arabic, which is spoken in Nablus, because these are two different tribes which lived separately for centuries. In Gaza, it's totally different Arabic, because in Gaza, the Bedouin element in the population is much bigger than in the West Bank. So the Bedouin language is totally different. So what I'm saying is that the only solution is to establish emirates based on the societies in the cities, which are homogeneous, more or less, while Israel should forever remain in the rural areas to make sure that we don't get another Hamastan with terrorist contiguity, either by elections, as already happened in 2006, or by coup d'etat, as happened in Gaza in 2007. Nobody in the world has the guarantee that a Palestinian state will never end up like a Hamastan. So in order to bring peace, in order to bring stability and prosperity, you have to create or to emulate the paradigm which succeeds in the Arab world, the Emirate one, and not to emulate the paradigm which fails, which brought Syria and Iraq and Libya and Sudan and Yemen to the situation which we see today. Palestinian state will end up like Syria and Iraq and Yemen. Emirates will be flourishing and successful like Dubai, Kuwait, because this is a thing which is based on the sociology, not on dreams about peoples which do not exist.
Now, final question. Based on your research, how many Emirates would you suggest are necessary to make that happen?
8 more or less. And one in Gaza is already a state. We didn't notice, but in 2 weeks from today, they will celebrate 9 years of stable regime in Gaza by Hamas. I don't like them, they don't like us, but yet they are a stable state. They don't have real challenge to the government. They have an army, they have a police, they have a military industry, they know how to produce projectiles. They already passed 3 wars with us and they survived. They have borders, they have judicial system and legitimate regime and ministry of everything which they need. So this is a state. And they function way much better than Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, Libya combined. So if something looks like a state, functions like a state, it is not a duck, it is a state. So we have to recognize Gaza. Okay, we have to live with them in some kind of deterrence, just like we lived with Egypt until the peace agreement was signed in 1979, or with Jordan until the peace of 1994. We know how to live with entities which do not like us. The same thing is with Gaza. It is a state, and actually the Hamas gave the first shot in the head of the Palestinian dream to have one state, because they are already the state in Gaza.
Sure.
So we can follow this line and continue the line which Hamas began by creating emirates in Hebron for the clans of Hebron, in Jericho, Ramallah for the Barghoutis, by the way, in Tulkarem for the Karmis, in Nablus, a state or an emirate for the Masri, Tukan, and Shaka clans, and so forth in Kalkilia and Jenin, while Israel should remain forever in the rural areas, offer Israeli citizenship to the villagers, which are more or less 10% of the population, no demographic threat, and the 90% will have their own states, free, and we can support them, we can help them. They need access to the sea, access to the Ben Gurion airport. It's okay. And I will make sure that all the pipes which they import will be made of plastic, not made of iron. And you know exactly why.
Well, it sounds like an amazing theory, and thank you so much for explaining it to us. Thank you for coming in today. Israel is marking its 2nd annual Unity Day, which is aimed at promoting tolerance and integration for Israel's population. There are a number of events to mark Israel's Unity Day, and President Reuven Rivlin and First Lady Nechama Rivlin hosted the Jerusalem Unity Prize ceremony. The event is dedicated to the memory of Naftali Frankel, Gilad Shaer, and Eyal Irach, who are 3 Israeli teenagers that were abducted and murdered by Palestinian terrorists in 2014, sparking the summer war with Gaza. Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat established the event in recognition of outstanding individuals and organizations for their work toward unity among the people of Israel and the diaspora. Former President Shimon Peres is also observing Unity Day by engaging in his own lifelong mission to promote peace and tolerance. During the closing ceremony of the Bridges to Peace project in Petah Tikva, he told 600 Jewish and Arab youth that Unity Day is to strive for equality, dialogue, and the prevention of racism, along with educating for peace. The program is jointly sponsored by the Peres Center for Peace, Google, and the Ort School Network. Thousands of students from different sectors who wouldn't otherwise meet are brought together, in the hope that once they get to know each other, they'll be able to overcome their differences. Israel's Minister of Education, Naftali Bennett, also spoke at the event, saying we are all family. He also asked the youth to keep on talking about the things they have in common instead of their differences, and to continue to fight against racism. There are lots of amazing programs for young Jews who are interested in coming to Israel. ILTV's Natasha Kirchuk took a closer look at the Veena organization and how the unique movement is having an impact on Jewish youth.
Every year, hundreds of Jewish youth from around the world make their way to Israel to do volunteer work with the Veena organization. Along the way, they rediscover their Jewish identity as they take part in the only secular Jewish yeshiva in the Holy Land. Veena is known as a Jewish movement for social change, and the organization brings together young Jews to take part in special programs dedicated to building Jewish pluralism and a just society in Israel.
I'm from Paris, France. I'm from Barcelona, Spain.
I'm from Stamford, Connecticut.
From Tikkun Olam to Gap Year, Veena offers an array of opportunities for young Jews from around the world to connect with Israel through volunteering. But perhaps the most special thing that Veena has to offer is its secular yeshiva.
When we look today in the Jewish world, we see that the majority of the Jews are non-religious. In Israel, almost 50% of the Israelis are chilonim, secular Israelis. And when you look on the Jews around the world, so they belong to many streams, but mostly the young people, the Jewish identity is non-faith-based. So we thought the time has come to open a secular yeshiva.
Veena is a very interesting organization because you can live your own Judaism as you want.
I wanted to reconnect a bit with my Judaism because I wasn't practicing so much in Barcelona, and also like to spend a whole year in Israel. It sounds really good.
I can tell you from first-hand experience as a Jew that's lived outside of Israel that it can be really hard to come to terms with your Jewish identity. Being able to come to Israel and sit down alongside Israelis to learn about what it means to be a Jew can be eye-opening, and it's clear it's had a profound impact on the students here.
I grew up my whole life in Orthodox day school, and a lot of people from my community were going to yeshivot and to seminaries this year. But I wanted a little bit of a different experience. I wanted a different type of Judaism. I think I've really been able to explore a lot more, and I think I've been able to question a lot of things, which were always kind of things that were taboo in my home community.
One of the core aspects of Veema's programs is volunteering. Because whether you're a religious or a secular Jew, social justice is a key facet of Judaism.
This is your responsibility as a Jew, and it's to do volunteer work in an afternoon center to help poor people to become better citizens and to succeed at school. It's part of our Jewish practice.
One of the two volunteering placements is with elderly people in Shchonat HaTikva. I also want to do Aliyah, and they did Aliyah like a long time ago, and it's interesting just to share the stories.
While the young Jews visiting Israel may perhaps be having the greatest learning experiences of their lives, so are the Israelis who they're working with.
We can study a lot from those Jews coming from abroad about our own identity and beliefs and belonging. Because for the typical Israeli, he doesn't have to ask himself questions of identity or engagement to the Jewish people or the Jewish community. He just lives in a Jewish place, in a Jewish state.
Working and learning side by side with Israelis certainly seems to be having an impact on many of the students taking part in Veena's programs. Some are even influenced to immigrate to Israel permanently.
I wanted to make Aliyah before coming. I was thinking about that. Thanks to Veena and Tikkun Olam, I'm now sure of my choice.
Israel's held itself since its inception to such a high standard that's impossible to actually be met in reality as a country. But the fact that it's always striving to better itself and to gain, to get to this incredibly high level is something that I love. I always wanted to move to Israel, but I wasn't sure if I was going to go to college first, and I enrolled in college and then deferred. And throughout this year, I have really come to the decision that this is where I want to be, and I want to stay here with my friends, and I want to join the army and really contribute to society here.
Today's word is biachad, which means together in Hebrew. The idea of living together in coexistence is definitely a popular subject in Israel, since people from several different religions and backgrounds live biachad in the Holy Land. Coexistence in Israel definitely isn't perfect, which we're sure you already know by watching the news. But many Israelis still believe that chayim ve'ovdim biachad, or living and working together, is the best way to live in peace and to really get to know your neighbor. Because in the end, rak biachad natzliach, or only together we will succeed. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Today it's 81 and sunny in Tel Aviv. It should warm up to 91 tomorrow, so get ready for a heat wave this weekend. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.85 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.